Before everything collapsed, there was peace. Not perfect, not storybook, but steady. We lived in the northern stretch of Kansas, near Linesburg, where the fields stretch wide and the wind always finds a way to talk through the windows. The kind of town where the gas station doubles as a diner, and everyone still waves whether they like you or not. I ran a small organic farm on 12 acres, nothing fancy, but enough to keep food on our table and the local co-op interested. Clara, my wife, had grown up on farms, but she was more suited for athleticism than soil. She taught track and field at the local high school, still ran marathons, and kept up a training regimen that would shame a Marine. We were opposites, in a way. I found calm in books, in growing vegetables. She found it in movement, in sweat. We had our routine. I'd wake before dawn, tend the livestock, prep orders for the co-op. Clara would head out for her morning run, come back soaked in dew and satisfaction. Breakfasts were shared. Then she'd head off to school, and I'd return to the fields or the barn. Some evenings we'd sit on the porch, not always talking, just watching the sun pull its long arms across the sky. She laughed easily then. I remember that. The kind of laugh that made strangers smile. There were disagreements, sure, about money, about expansion, about why I insisted on planting heirloom carrots that looked like they needed therapy, but nothing explosive. Just the normal frictions of living alongside someone else. Then came the crash. It was a rainy Friday in October. A van blew a stop sign. I remember the horn, the impossible screech, then a silence so deep it felt like the world had been turned off. When I opened my eyes, it wasn't the sky I saw, but hospital tiles. Broken ribs. Fractured femur. Bruised lungs. A punctured silence lodged somewhere inside me. I was alive, but not whole. Recovery took months. Standing up felt like dragging a rusted plow through concrete. Clara stepped in like a soldier. She did it all, fed the animals, fixed the busted irrigation line, even built the chicken coop I'd been putting off for 3 seasons. At night, she sat by my bed and read aloud. I thought it was love. Maybe it was. Maybe it was guilt. Or habit. I remember one night, early in the recovery, I woke up and heard her crying in the kitchen. The kind of crying you hide in a towel. When I asked about it the next morning, she smiled and said I must have been dreaming. She grew quieter after that. Less touch. More distance. But I chalked it up to stress. We were in survival mode. That's what I told myself. That she was tired. That I was broken. That once I was back on my feet, so would we be? Looking back, that's what haunts me most. How long I went without seeing. The healing was long and slow. I graduated from crutches to a cane, and from a cane to stubbornly pretending I didn't need one. Every step was a reminder that I had once been unbreakable, at least in my own eyes. Clara stayed in motion through it all, never pausing, never breaking stride. She ran the farm like she was training for war, as if exhaustion could outrun grief. But I started to notice things. Not loud alarms, but soft betrayals. She kept her phone close, even in the bathroom. New contacts appeared, names I didn't recognize. She started humming songs I'd never heard before, and laughing at things I wasn't a part of. I wanted to believe it was just life moving on. But deep down, I felt it, the rhythm of us was offbeat. One Saturday in February, she came back from a track coach conference in Wichita. She dropped her duffel bag at the door, gave me a hug that was more routine than warmth, and said she was exhausted. When I reached for her hand, she didn't pull away, but she didn't hold on either. Her fingers just rested. Like a glove on a mannequin. That night, I lay awake listening to the house breathe. I could hear the pipes hum, the wind chatter against the siding, and somewhere upstairs, Clara murmuring into her phone. I convinced myself it was work. Teachers get texts from parents. Coaches get updates from athletes. But my heart? It knew better. My therapist, Sharon, had once told me that pain isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a whisper you try to ignore until it starts screaming in a quiet room. One morning, Clara asked if I could start driving myself to PT appointments. You need the independence, she said, tying her laces like a soldier preparing for deployment. But I knew it was something else. Less time together. More distance. That evening, I sat alone on the porch with a heating pad on my hip and a whiskey glass in my hand. The wind picked up and knocked over a potted fern Clara had bought years ago but never cared for. It hit the ground and split down the middle. I stared at it a long time before saying aloud, "Huh. Guess we finally matched." I chuckled. The kind of laugh that doesn't sound like laughter at all, but more like air trying to be brave. It hit me then. All these years, I'd been planting roots while Clara had been training to run. I tried to distract myself with a book, but my eyes kept returning to the phone in my lap. I didn't want to be that guy, the one who snoops. But love makes you humble, and fear makes you curious. Eventually, I opened her tablet. It wasn't locked. Part of me wishes it had been. Then I wouldn't have seen it. A text thread with someone named Miles, just initials. And inside, a message that unspooled everything. "Miles, can't stop thinking about last weekend. You looked incredible." He has no idea, does he? Clara, no. He thinks I'm tired. He thinks I'm tired and sad. There were other messages. Nothing explicit. Just enough to know what I needed to know. That I was living in the same house as someone already halfway gone. I closed the tablet and set it gently on the coffee table. Then I walked out to the barn, sat in the hayloft, and cried until the sun came up. Not loud. Not messy. Just slow tears that fell without warning. Like rain from a sky that was clear 5 minutes ago. Once you start doubting, everything becomes a clue. The silence becomes suspicious. The smile becomes strategy. The ordinary becomes a performance you weren't invited to rehearse. I'd sit at the kitchen table and watch Clara move through the house, trying to memorize the version of her I used to know. She began using new shampoo. Something citrusy. She never liked citrus. Said it made her sneeze. She switched to almond milk, even though she once called it nut water for hippies. Then there were the new leggings, not bought on sale, not from our usual store, but from some high-end brand I only recognized because Sharon, my therapist, had mentioned it during a talk about consumer escapism. I convinced myself it was fine. People change. Preferences shift. But denial isn't peace. It's just fear with a fake ID. One morning, I watched her jog down the driveway. I waited 10 minutes, then followed in the truck, coasting slow with the engine off. Half a mile from our place, she stopped. A black Tacoma pulled up. She didn't hesitate. Just got in. The truck turned left, toward the highway. I pulled over and sat with my hands gripping the wheel like it was all that kept me from falling apart. Back at home, I told myself not to jump to conclusions. Maybe it was a rideshare group. Maybe I was misreading everything. But then I remembered something my grandfather once said while fixing a fence post: if it creaks like a lion, leans like a betrayal, son, it ain't a damn misunderstanding. That night, I scrolled through her old emails. I told myself I was looking for something innocent. Instead, I found receipts. A hotel in Wichita. Dinner for two. A spa appointment charged to her credit card, signed for at the front desk in handwriting I knew wasn't hers. When Clara got home, she was glowing. The kind of glow people get from good wine or something far more intimate. She leaned down and kissed my forehead. It was soft. Pitying. I told her dinner was in the oven. She smiled. "You're amazing, you know that?" I nodded, but I didn't speak. Because if I did, I would have broken. Right there. In the kitchen. With the smell of rosemary chicken, pretending everything was fine. Later, while washing dishes, I dropped a plate. It shattered. Clara ran in and asked if I was okay. I told her it slipped. She knelt down to help pick up the pieces. Her hand grazed mine. And for a moment, I almost believed it was real. That we were still us. But then I saw it. A text flashed across her smartwatch screen: "Missing you already. M." She didn't see me see it. She was still bent over the pieces. I just stood up, walked outside, and screamed into the pasture. The goats looked unimpressed. One bleated and went back to chewing. Funny thing about betrayal, it doesn't always feel like an explosion. Sometimes it's a paper cut that never stops bleeding. You learn to function with it. You learn to smile while you're leaking. That night, I met Hallie. She was a former student of Clara's, now helping coach at a nearby college. She stopped by the farm for eggs. We chatted for a bit, small-town banter about weather and water pressure. As she turned to leave, she paused. "You deserve better than the way she talks about you at those parties," Hallie said quietly. I didn't ask her to explain. I just nodded. Because when the truth starts dripping from the mouths of strangers, it's time to stop calling it doubt. Just as the silence between Clara and me had grown into a comfortable fog, something you don't enjoy but learn to breathe through, life decided to smash a cymbal in the middle of our orchestra. Her father showed up. Not announced. Not invited. Not even expected. One Thursday afternoon, I heard gravel crunching outside and looked up from the barn to see an old tan RV rolling up the driveway. It sputtered like a man trying to hold in a sneeze and parked sideways next to the coupe. Out stepped Hank. Hank McAllister. Retired insurance adjuster. Mustache like a broom, eyes like a disappointed eagle. Clara's father, and one of the few men who could make a compliment sound like a scolding. "Still growing those weird carrots, huh?" he said, before even shaking my hand. "Still alive, huh?" I replied. It wasn't gallows humor if it was mostly true. Clara was just as surprised. "Dad? What are you doing here?" "Well, I figured I'd visit my favorite daughter and her favorite farmer. And my house has termites. Might be here a while." He laughed like he just solved the economy. So Hank stayed. And with him came an avalanche of mundane interrogations. "You ever think about fencing that north pasture again? Looks vulnerable. Why don't you two have a television in the bedroom? That's where the news happens. What do you feed your goats?" They looked judgmental. He wasn't mean, exactly. Just relentless. The man could outtalk a Jehovah's Witness on espresso. And he loved Clara, that was clear. But I couldn't shake the feeling he saw through me. Like he knew something was cracked beneath the surface, even if he couldn't name it. Clara, for her part, acted like nothing was wrong. She baked more. Smiled more. Played the role of attentive daughter and committed wife. I watched her move through the kitchen like an actress stuck in a rerun. Everything slightly too practiced. One night, Hank and I sat on the porch. He lit a cigar that smelled like burnt hope and said, "You love her?" I blinked. Of course. He exhaled smoke. It curled up like a question mark. Then don't let her forget it. Women drift when they feel unseen. Men too. You ever feel unseen, Kurt? I looked at the sky, where stars were starting to poke through the dark like pinholes in a secret. Lately? I feel like a ghost who pays the bills. Hank didn't laugh. He just nodded. Like maybe, just maybe, we understood each other after all. Inside, Clara was texting. I knew it. The glow of the screen reflected off her glasses. Her smile wasn't for me. It hadn't been in months. But now, she had an audience. Her father. The old life. The illusion of what we used to be. And I realized something: the more people she had watching, the more she wanted to play her part convincingly. So I smiled too. Let the show go on. But I had a new plan. I always thought if I caught Clara cheating, it'd be dramatic. Like, soap opera level. Screaming, tears, thunder cracking overhead. Instead, it happened on a Tuesday. The kind of day you forget unless something unforgettable happens. I was in the barn, pretending to reorganize the tool wall, a project I started in 2017 and never finished. Probably a metaphor in there somewhere. I had just hung a rusty crescent wrench when I glanced at the security feed from the trail cam I'd repurposed to face the road. Purely for coyotes. Or so I told myself. That's when I saw it. The black Tacoma. Same as before. But this time, it didn't stop a half-mile away. It pulled into the driveway like it belonged there. I don't know what came over me. I didn't yell. Didn't cry. I wiped my hands on a rag and walked up to the porch like I was about to sell someone a vacuum. And there he was, Miles. From the texts. From the hotel receipts. Wearing running gear like he was just dropping by for a post-jog smoothie. Clara met him at the door. No hesitation. No nerves. Just that smile. The one she used to save for me. When she turned and saw me standing there, rag in hand, sweat on my neck and truth in my eyes, she froze. I said it like I was ordering a sandwich. Afternoon. Who's your friend? She opened her mouth, but I raised my hand. Actually, don't. Let me guess. This is Miles. From Wichita. Likes expensive spas and bad timing. Miles cleared his throat, which was brave, considering I was holding a pair of pruning shears. I think I should go. Oh no, buddy. Please. Stay. Maybe you can help me finish the tool wall. I hear cheaters are great with alignment. Clara hissed my name like I was embarrassing her in front of the furniture. Kurt, stop. Please. That was the spark. Stop? You want me to stop? Clara, I built this damn life with my hands. I fed you. I bled for this farm. I sat through your dad's 47-minute monologue on weatherproofing shingles without jumping into traffic. And you brought him here? Here? While your father is inside eating the peach cobbler I baked with real effort? Hank stepped out just then, holding a fork. Everything all right? Miles stepped back. Clara stepped forward. I stepped straight into my own downfall. Hank, I said, turning to him with the gravitas of a man who knows his house is on fire but still pauses to adjust the thermostat, your daughter is cheating on me. He blinked. Looked at Clara. Looked at Miles. Oh, he said. And then, after a beat, well, that's disappointing. The understatement almost made me laugh. Almost. Later that night, after Miles wisely vanished, Hank and I drank on the porch. Clara stayed in the house. She didn't apologize. Didn't explain. Just retreated, like a soldier outnumbered by her own guilt. You okay? Hank asked. Nope. But I'm hydrated. We drank until the stars turned blurry. At one point, I said, you ever think maybe you missed some signs in your own marriage? Hank looked at me like I was the slow student in an algebra class. Son, I missed signs, ignored sirens, and married a woman who considered bath towels a conspiracy. We're all idiots in love. Just depends on how long you're willing to stay stupid. I nodded. Because that was the most honest thing I'd heard in months. And that night, while Clara slept in the guest room she used to call her studio, I lay in our bed staring at the ceiling fan, counting the turns, wondering how many times a man could start over before he just calls it surviving. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of bacon. Not the metaphorical kind. Actual bacon. Thick-cut, maple-smoked, sizzling in a pan like it owed the house rent. For one dumb, half-conscious moment, I thought maybe Clara was trying to fix things. That maybe bacon was her love language. Then I walked into the kitchen and saw Hank wearing my apron, the one that says Grill Sergeant with a cartoon cow saluting, and flipping bacon with surgical precision. Morning, sunshine, he said, like he hadn't watched my marriage burst into flames 12 hours earlier. What are you doing? Making breakfast. You look like a man who needed protein and closure. Clara went out for a run. Of course she did. He handed me a plate, then gestured to the table where he'd already brewed coffee, toasted bread, and sliced fruit like we were hosting a retreat for men recently betrayed by women who do yoga. You know, Hank said between sips of coffee, when my wife left me, she took the dog, the Volvo, and all the forks. Said she was tired of me stabbing at things and missing. Sounds about right. You got off lucky. You kept the cobbler. We laughed, and it was the first real laugh I'd had in weeks. The kind that comes from the lungs, not the face. After breakfast, I stepped outside to find Clara in the yard, talking to Miles on speakerphone. She didn't see me. I didn't interrupt. I just listened. He hasn't asked me to leave, she was saying. He just lets me be here. It's like I'm haunting my own life. Pause. No, I haven't told him it's over. Because I don't think he believes it yet. She turned then, saw me, and dropped the phone like it was radioactive. Morning, I said, with a smile that felt borrowed. Enjoy your jog? Kurt, I didn't mean for you to hear that. No one ever does. We stood there in the dew-soaked silence. Two people who used to share a future. Now just sharing space. Then she broke. Not in tears, not in rage. Just folded in on herself like a tired apology. I never wanted it to be this way. You did, Clara. You just didn't think I'd be awake for it. She looked up. So what now? I shrugged. Now I live my life. And you decide if you want to be a memory or a mistake. And that should have been the end of it. But life's a Tarantino movie, not a Hallmark one. Because just as I turned to leave, Hank stepped outside, holding his coffee like a chalice. Clara, I booked you a rental. You can stay with me in Larne till you figure your shit out. But this house? This man? You don't get to ghost him and sleep in his sheets. Clara opened her mouth, then shut it. The look on her face was priceless. Like someone who'd been caught shoplifting emotions. I almost clapped. Instead, I said, "Thanks, Hank. Didn't know you were into surprise interventions." He winked. "Oh, I dabble." Clara packed that afternoon. No yelling. No fight. Just the quiet thud of drawers closing on a life she'd already left emotionally months ago. When the truck rolled away, I stood on the porch, arms crossed, feeling like the last man on earth who still used a flip phone and believed in loyalty. Then, as if the universe was bored, Sharon called. "Kurt? You missed your appointment. Everything okay?" I chuckled. Define okay. Also, how do you feel about house calls and bourbon-fueled grief journaling? She laughed. Tell you what. I'll bring the notebooks, you bring the bourbon. It wasn't a resolution. It wasn't redemption. But it was something. And next? Oh, next was going to be real interesting. You ever try to clean a house after someone leaves? I don't mean dusting or mopping. I mean cleaning the air. The smell of their shampoo in the bathroom. The ghost of their voice on a voicemail you forgot to delete. It's like grief put on deodorant and decided to stick around a while. I spent that weekend pretending to be busy. Fixed the back gate that hadn't latched in 4 years. Cleaned the gutters. Organized the junk drawer. Who organizes a junk drawer? A man who's trying not to drown, that's who. Then Sharon showed up. She parked next to the coupe like she belonged there, got out of her car with a bottle of bourbon in one hand and a yellow notepad in the other. She wore jeans and a flannel shirt, no makeup, and hair tied up like she was ready to either counsel me or help me rebuild a barn. Maybe both. Thought we'd try a new kind of therapy, she said. Farm style. We sat on the porch with a portable heater between us, the bottle open, her pen moving as I talked. I told her everything. All of it. Even the stuff I hadn't said out loud before. About how I'd known for months something was wrong but didn't want to ruin the illusion. About how I felt more ashamed of being calm than I ever did about being hurt. Then I told her about Carrie. Carrie was the child Clara and I almost had. That one summer, 4 years into the marriage, when Clara whispered she was late and I started looking at cribs online. When she miscarried, she didn't cry. I did. I cried so hard I cracked a molar. And that was when she started running more. And I started talking less. Do you still want kids? Sharon asked quietly. Some days, I said. But I'm not sure the world needs more people who like long silences and heirloom tomatoes. She smiled. Then she reached out, not to touch me, but to place a folded piece of paper on the table. This is from Clara. It was in the mailbox this morning. I unfolded it. The handwriting was unmistakable. Loopy, precise, the kind you could use to label spice jars. Kurt. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I needed you to know that Miles left. The moment I packed, he panicked. Said he wasn't ready for a real life with me. Said I was never supposed to take it this far. I thought I wanted wild. I thought I wanted freedom. But what I had with you. I only see it clearly now that it's gone. I'm not coming back to ask for a second chance. I just hope you don't let this destroy the kindness in you. You are the best man I ever knew. I just didn't know how to hold good things. Clara. I folded the letter slowly. That change anything? Sharon asked. I shook my head. It explains it. Doesn't excuse it. We sat in silence for a long time. Then she poured 2 more fingers of bourbon and tapped her glass to mine. To what comes next? To what comes next? Then, as if the universe still had 1 card left to play, a car pulled into the drive. A rusty sedan I hadn't seen in over a decade. The door opened. Out stepped my brother Eli. Same crooked grin. Same leather jacket from high school. Except now he had a kid. Surprise, he said. Heard you might need family. I stood there stunned as the little girl beside him waved shyly. She had my eyes. This is Junie, Eli said. Her mom took off last month. Thought we'd come see what the other side of heartbreak looked like. I crouched down, heart thudding like a bass drum. Hey Junie, I said. You like goats? She nodded solemnly. Do they bite? Only if you vote for the wrong candidate. She giggled. And in that laugh, something inside me stitched back together. You want a hook? Here it is, the story isn't ending. It's just beginning again. I didn't expect Eli to stick around long. He's the kind of guy who shows up in your life like a stray cat with good stories and a suspicious tan, then disappears with your best flannel and a bottle of whiskey. But this time, he stayed. Said he wanted Junie to know what stability looked like, even if she had to learn it from a goat and a busted Ford tractor. Junie took to the farm like a duck to dysfunctional water. Named the goats after members of her kindergarten class. She renamed my oldest hen Mrs. Wiggles because, according to her, that bird had sass. Kid wasn't wrong. The 3 of us, me, Eli, and Junie, became an unlikely trio. We fixed fences. Cooked weird meals. Argued over how many marshmallows belonged in hot cocoa. Eli said 5, Junie said 17. I sided with Junie because I'm not an idiot. Then Clara called. I let it ring the first time. And the second. But by the 3rd call, I figured I'd either pick up or throw the phone into the compost. Hey, Mason. Clara. I heard your brother's in town. I blinked. The wind told you that, or are we getting surveillance drones in Kansas now? She laughed, then stopped herself. I was wondering if we could talk. Just talk. No agenda. I looked out the window. Junie was giving a pep talk to a goat. Eli was fixing the fence in his usual way, with a beer in one hand and a complete disregard for OSHA standards. All right, I said. Come by tomorrow morning. Early. She showed up at 7 o'clock sharp. Same ponytail, different eyes. They looked tired. Not in the I haven't slept way, but in the I've been haunted by my own decisions kind of way. We sat at the picnic table. She brought coffee, probably hoping it'd soften me. It didn't. So, I said. Miles turned out to be a clown car full of red flags. Yeah. And you thought, gee, let me burn my life down for that circus. She smiled sadly. You always had a way with words. And you had a way with secrets. She flinched, just a little. Enough to make it worth saying. I'm not here to ask for anything, she said. I just wanted to say thank you. For not screaming. For not going nuclear. I laughed. You think I didn't want to? Hell, Clara, I've had entire revenge monologues rehearsed in the shower. One even included interpretive dance. She actually chuckled. That was the worst part. The way it still sounded like home. Then Junie came running out, breathless and bright-eyed. Uncle Mason. The goats escaped. All of them. Even Mrs. Wiggles. I stood. This feels like a test. Eli followed with a lasso and a grin. Told you we needed a border collie. Clara stood too, watching the chaos unfold. Something in her face changed. Not regret. Not longing. Maybe realization. You're different, she said quietly. I looked at Junie, her wild curls bouncing as she chased a goat with a stick. Yeah. I am. We caught the goats. Sort of. One is still technically missing, but I'm pretty sure she joined a pack of coyotes and is now their queen. As Clara left, she turned to me. You're going to be okay. No, I said. I'm going to be better. She nodded. Got in her car. Drove off. And I stood there, surrounded by noise and family and the weird, electric buzz of a life rebuilding itself. The storm had passed. But there was still lightning in the distance. There's an old saying that goes, the axe forgets, but the tree remembers. I think about that a lot now. For months, I swung my words like that axe. Quiet. Sharp. Clean. I thought silence made me strong. Stoic. But really, it just made me distant. From Clara. From myself. From the version of Mason who didn't bury his feelings in fence repairs and sarcasm. After she left for good, the house became a cathedral of reminders. Her handwriting on old grocery lists. The pair of socks she never could find. The smell of rosemary in the spice rack. You never know how loud absence is until it echoes off everything you thought was yours. I sat on the porch one night after Junie went to bed and Eli wandered off to make another terrible chili experiment. I had bourbon, a blanket, and a head full of ghosts. That's when the truth started whispering. I wasn't blameless. I hadn't cheated, no. But I did retreat. I treated love like a job well done. Like once you built it, you could set it on autopilot. Clara needed conversation. Spontaneity. Affirmation. I gave her schedules and chores and reliable silence. She married a man who knew how to fix broken things, but never learned how to talk about the cracks before they spread. You can't build a future with someone if you never unpack your past, Sharon once told me. So here's the part one never said out loud. I grew up watching my father cheat on my mom. Affairs folded into business trips. Denial served with steak dinners. I promised I'd never be like him. And I wasn't. But I also never let anyone close enough to see how afraid I was of becoming him. Clara used to say I loved her like I was waiting for her to disappear. Maybe she wasn't wrong. The thing is, heartbreak doesn't make you wise. It just peels back your layers until you see what's been rotting underneath. And if you're lucky, if you really pay attention, you start planting better things in the dirt where your old self used to grow. That week, Junie asked me if I was ever going to marry again. I don't know, Junebug, I said. Why, you got someone in mind? She giggled. No. But I think you'd be a good husband if you smiled more. So you're saying my face is the problem? Got it. She shrugged. You could at least pretend to be happy. So I did. We painted the barn that weekend. Bright red. Even painted little white hearts on the trim. Eli called it tacky. I called it defiance. Junie called it Goat Castle. Everyone wins. Then, in the mail, came a manila envelope. Legal documents. The final nail. Divorce papers, signed and sealed. And tucked inside was a photo. Clara and me. Our wedding day. Laughing in the sun. On the back, she'd written, "You were my safest place." I just didn't know how to stay safe. I didn't cry. I just stood in the hallway, photo in hand, and whispered, "Me neither." Tomorrow, I'll go see Sharon again. And maybe, just maybe, I'll ask her how to stop surviving and start living. Because this story isn't over. But the man telling it? He's about to turn the page. The morning after I mailed the photo back to Clara, with nothing written on the back, just space, something strange happened. I woke up and didn't feel hollow. The pain was still there, like an old bruise, but it wasn't driving anymore. It was just a passenger. And for the first time in a long time, I remembered what it felt like to sit at the wheel of my own life. That day, I rebuilt the bench under the cottonwood tree. The one Clara and I carved our initials into back when we believed in forever. I sanded off the old marks. Not to erase them, just to make room for something new. Eli and Junie helped. She painted a sun in the corner. Bright yellow. Crooked. Beautiful. I asked Sharon if she ever regretted anything. She said, only the things I stayed silent about. So here's my loud truth. I loved wrong. I held back when I should have leaned in. I stayed quiet when I should have shouted that I was scared. But I also learned that loving someone means more than staying. It means showing up, not just in the room, but in the moment. And to you, the person holding this story now like it might crack in your hands, don't wait for collapse to start rebuilding. Don't make silence your safe space. Speak. Share. Cry if you have to. And if someone loves you, really loves you, they'll stay through the noise. Life won't always give you justice, but it will give you chances. Take them. As for me, I started writing again. Not just in a journal. I wrote a letter to Junie, one she won't read until she's grown. About what love looks like. What it demands. What it deserves. I ended it with the words I never said enough. You are worth staying for. And so am I. And maybe that's what healing really is, not forgetting the pain, but remembering your worth. To anyone who's ever been betrayed, abandoned, or doubted by someone they gave their soul to, you are not broken. You are being rebuilt. And somewhere out there, someone will love the version of you that came after the fire. Keep going. We're just getting started.